This is the Work University Podcast, episode 52.
This is Work University, and I'm Annalisa Felix. This is where I interview people from various employment backgrounds and get the inside scoop on what their job is really like. If you're just getting into the workforce, or if you're curious about getting into something new, listen up.
All right, today I'm speaking with Rosy Callejas, and Rosy is a SEO manager, which means a search engine optimization manager. Welcome, Rosy.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So let's just jump in. So what does that even mean? SEO, search engine optimization. What does that mean?
It means making sure people can find your website when they're looking online. So if I'm typing, let's say I'm going to Google search and I'm trying to find something, like I want my website to show up for whatever they're typing.
That's a quick, small little blurb of a job description. So let's get more into that. So your day-to-days, what do you do? And I'm sure days are different, but what does the typical day look like for an SEO manager?
Yeah, day-to-days are very, very different. Some days I'm focused on content. So like looking at our website and saying like, okay, this blog needs to be updated. Or like this product page needs wording updates. That kind of stuff. Other days I'm looking at like analytics. How much traffic did we get? Did our traffic go up? Did it go down? Was there any impact anywhere? Other days it's very technical. So it's like back-end stuff. It's like, hey, is the code on the website right? Is it broken? Like, did anything break in any updates? Do we need to make any fixes? So, and like that can mean a lot of different things. For example, like let's say your website's international. Well, there's extra code that has to go on it. And so sometimes you might not even find like the issue because you're not even looking at the right section, the international side. It changes, and it's always interesting depending on how big your site is.
So is that typical that code breaks? Because I thought once I set something up, once I set my website to go, I'm good to go. I don't need to mess with that anymore.
Well, in an ideal world, yes, it's like you have it, you publish it, it's good. But sometimes there's things that are attached. And so you fix something on one side, then the other side breaks, and you're like, you had no idea that even caused it. So you're like scrambling. At my last job, we had an incident where we couldn't figure out what code was causing the issue. And we would go back and forth, and it was weeks and weeks and weeks of like us looking at code, us looking at the back end, us Googling, trying to figure out like what caused the issue, how do we fix it? Okay, we've done all of the recommended fixes, and the issue was still there, and we could not figure out like what and how to remedy it.
Troubleshooting, basically, a lot. It sounds like you're putting out fires because, yeah. I mean, and I know that you've worked with a major company who is a software company, and I can't imagine you being on a team of SEO managers to troubleshoot, because I believe it was international, right? As you mentioned?
Yes, it was international.
So when these breaks come up, how do you find out about them? Or do you do checks?
Typically, we have to do checks. So we try to have systems in place to be like, okay, so-and-so checks this, so-and-so checks that. Well, and this is from like a larger company where there are multiple different people working on the same thing. Like a smaller company that changes, but at a large company you have different people, each one does a different task. And so like we will have so and so checking, like, okay, you check the code, you check the analytics, you check the content, you check whatever else. And so someone will catch it and flag it at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But yeah, like, and if it's not us on the team, it'll be somebody else, like let's say engineering, like they see a bug. Hey, this I see this bug on the site. Let's fix it. Okay, cool. Well, how do you fix it? Sometimes they know, and sometimes they ask us. Sometimes there's like product people. So because the company is so big, somebody somewhere will catch it and flag it, which is fantastic. I love that.
That being said, you would probably have to work with members of different teams, like analysts and SMEs or subject matter experts for content and different things to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Is that accurate?
Oh, yes. There was so many different people I'd have to interact with. There was like product, content, blog team, the analytics side, the engineering side, other people from like digital, so like UX designers, like you got the full array of people and all working on this one site.
So in your day-to-day, And in your position as a search engine optimization manager, what is it that just really lights your fire? You just dig about it because you've been doing it for so long.
I'm nerdy. I love websites. I've been playing with websites since like middle school. Um, I remember I would sit and like back in the day when we had MySpace, like I would sit all weekend and just like tinker with the HTML. I'm like, how do I change the design? How do I make it look like this? Like all the functionalities of it. I've always liked that. So it's not really a surprise to me when I ended up getting a job doing like SEO and working on websites. I was like, oh, that makes sense. That makes so much sense.
On the other end of that spectrum, what is it that maybe, people don't know about that you wish they did? Or God, if another department only knew what I had to do to X, Y, and Z, what are the other side of that coin?
So like, yes, people that do engine optimization are experts in their field, but that doesn't mean we know everything. The internet's always changing, constantly evolving. Google does whatever they do, and we're just trying to keep up and play the game with them and just make sure like the website keeps being visible. So empathy, and it goes both ways. Like I need to be empathetic, they need to be empathetic. Like we're all just trying to do our job and get the best result out of it.
What about when you're not troubleshooting, putting out fires? Are there any like administrative things like you have to work on reports or the things that don't really relate to the website itself primarily, but like back end things that we don't know about?
Oh yeah, there is a lot of reporting in this field in this job. Um, so like we're building dashboards, we're taking those dashboards and breaking it down for like executives or other people that don't understand them and saying like, okay, this is what this means. This is what this data looks like. This is what we should do with this data. 'Cause obviously, sometimes they don't know. And it's like, oh, how do we move forward? Like, what's the path? What's the strategy based off of what we're seeing that the data is providing? That's something that I had no idea was a part of this job before I started.
So, research, creating reports, and translating your information so that the people making decisions can make their decisions for the company, right? That is a lot. And then what about certifications? Do you have to have different certifications, continuous learning, social media and, the internet itself is changing so much. That's what I was thinking. How do you keep up? Or is it just, again, whatever happens, you have to kind of put out the fire?
It's a lot of reading. So I'm always reading like the latest articles online saying like, okay, this thing changed. Oh, here's the latest update from Google. Oh, here's compliance regulations like you can't do tracking, you can't do cookies and all that information that we need to serve them better results. So like because things are always changing like that, we have to like stay in the know, read those sites. There's no like certifications that would fit into this one. I mean, like there are some, but I don't know how beneficial they are really. I would say like it's a more hands-on, like you'll figure everything out as you're doing it. Sure, the certifications will help you kind of understand the basics, but you need to really just dive in and be in the weeds and you'll get the hang of it that way.
So, how did you get there? You said, when you were younger, you were really tinkering with the websites. And that's so funny to hear somebody say, yeah, when I was young, I used to tinker with websites. And when I was young, we didn't even have websites. So, that's kind of funny to hear. But again, how did you get on your path to being an SEO manager?
Well, I went to San Diego State, and in San Diego, there is a SEO community. Like there's a lot of jobs in that field. They're all on the agency side, and you kind of like you should have had an internship in college, or you should have some type of experience to get in your foot in the door. And I didn't have that, so it was very difficult for me to try to get a job in San Diego. So what ended up happening was I moved back up north, and I found a job in the Bay Area. I was doing SEO for like legal websites. So what I ended up working on was like divorcenet.com and Nolo and like all of these interesting topics that I had no idea that I 20 something, you're just not really interested in like divorce and wills and trust. Like that's not top of mind. So that's kind of how I started. They really asked me like my experience on student organizations, like, oh, you were involved in that. Well, what did you do? What does that mean? And that's kind of what piqued their interest. Like, oh, she has potential to learn and to grow, and we can mold her, and let's give her a shot that way. And then
Okay.
from there, kind of the same thing at the next job. It's like, oh, she's got potential. Like we can teach her some things. She's eager and she's willing to learn. And
Mm.
that's kind of how I've kept my career path going.
Would you recommend then internships, and how did networking, and let's even talk about the networking that you're doing even to this day to with other businesses or other people. So what would you recommend for anybody who does want to get into this position?
I actually did have someone ask me this question like a couple weeks ago. And she's like, well, how did you learn? How did you get there? And I was like, well, you learn on the job, but definitely just whoever you meet that's in this field, just ask them questions like, how did you do it? Like what do you recommend? Can I tap into your like network? Can I pick your brain? I have a friend that asked me a bunch of questions randomly at times, and he's like, well, how do I learn more? And my advice is always like, just pick a website and just start looking at it, start dissecting it, and figuring out like, is this good? Is this bad? What does this mean? And then you can always ask people that are doing it on day to day, like, hey, I found this thing. Is that right? Does that make sense? Can you put me in the right path? I think that's always like the best way to kind of keep learning and growing here.
What about organizations that are centered around SEO and internet and tech, things like that? Are there any kind of associations that you belong to that keep you up with the changing world, the industry, and also the people?
There are a couple groups on LinkedIn. So like I've been certified in a couple different tools, and once you're certified, you're in like those networks and those groups on LinkedIn. So there's that, kind of read and keep up with like what people are doing. There's like two really big publications, like Search Engine Land, and I forgot the other one right now, so that sucks. But those two, they publish daily content. Hey, this update. Hey, this or that. So those are great learnings that you can look into. The people, my network, obviously people that I've worked with, people that I respect in the industry. I'm like, they've been doing this for 20 years. Like the internet has evolved since then. What have they learned? What do they know? Can I ask them questions? Like, what do they think? I have my last manager. I love her, totally respect her. I will always go to her. I'm like, so you saw that thing, like Chat GPT, AI. What is that? What are your thoughts on that? I'm always like, what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think? And I love to hear her perspective because it's very interesting. So yeah, like I have people I can kind of tap into and ask them questions.
Now, for the personality of somebody getting into this line of work, I guess my first thought is this a stressful? It sounds a little stressful because you're the face of, you're handling the website or the information, which is the face of that company who put you in charge to do it, and their clients, prospective clients. Is that stressful?
I'm not gonna lie, there are days that are very, very stressful, especially when things don't go the way you want them to go. So like, oh, your traffic's down. Well, why is it down? People are freaking out. It could be chaos. But there are other days where it's like, you're sharing wins and it's fantastic and everyone's on like cloud nine, like yay, celebration. So it depends. It can vary. But yeah, I
Is
think
it
there's stress attached to this job.
is there anything that people really don't know that you wish somebody asked you about this position that you'd want to share?
If people only knew how much data I have to look at. Some days you turn into like a web analyst and you're just like in the data all day. Um, and I'm not gonna lie, that's not my favorite part of the job, but I do it because it's necessary and I like to see what the data says, but yeah, if people only knew how much data you have to look at and sift through and clean. Oh my gosh, cleaning up the data is
What does that mean?
wow. So there's bots, there's like different bots online.
Mm-hmm.
And also depending on like how big your site is, so you have to filter out, you have to like exclude a certain data sets that just isn't the best and isn't ideal because you want to represent like truly what's happening on the site.
So that brings up a good point about bots. And, for those who may not know what a bot is, when you get onto a website and at the corner of the screen, there's a hello, can I help you? That's what you're referring to as a bot, right?
Yes, that is a bot, but it's a bot that's on your site and that's like chat. You're just chatting with them. But
Okay.
it's something else. So, and I was talking to somebody yesterday about like cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, we work with the cybersecurity company, and all you see are like pings from different countries, like China and Russia, like attacking different websites. So that's a bot. It's fake people. It's simulating fake people showing up to your site and interacting with your site.
What?
I
To
know
try and
it's
corrupt
wild,
it?
right? Sometimes to try to corrupt it. Other times they're just like spamming your site just to like inflate it so it slows down because your servers can't handle it.
What would be the benefit to somebody slowing down your server?
I have no idea. I guess it just depends on what the agenda is there.
Oh gosh. Okay. That's a totally different podcast, but you just blew my mind with that. Okay. So, yeah, and I've actually seen that there is a website that tracks in real time all of the major spam and hits that take place, and it looks like a war games video, but
Yeah.
I forgot what it's called, but it shows in real time that this is happening, like, I don't know, thousands of time a minute. I don't know. It's crazy to see. And it looks like you can see, boom, it hit here, boom, it hit here, boom, it hit here. And even that's off by a few seconds, but it's just crazy. So, I mean, and we didn't even talk about cybersecurity. So I'm sure you have to deal a lot with that and understand what's going on with that. So you covered a lot. So any craziness that's happened in your any crazy stories that you want to share, or any bumps in the road that you'd like to share with anybody?
I've heard crazy stories of like people turning off the website. Well, that's a huge no. You don't accidentally do that. Because then you lose like leads and that turns into revenue. So like yeah, there's impact, long-term impact to a few seconds, like, okay, you're offline, like that sucks. Um, at my first job, I accidentally got rid of like the fill in your information button. I was just like tinkering with it. Somehow I got erased. um, and I scrambled. I was scrambling so
Oh
bad. I was
no.
like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this. Like, where did it go? How do I fix it? There was no back button. So obviously I had to go back and like place it into the form again. I think it took me like 30 minutes. And luckily my manager was very, very nice, but they were like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Like, don't do that again.
Ah, awesome. So Rosie, we covered, what you do and how you got there, and advice. How can people reach you? Because I know you've done work with students, and you do a lot of outreach. And tell me about some of the things that you're involved in and where people can reach you.
You can reach me directly on LinkedIn. For the most part, answer all of the messages that come in. So yeah, and I'm involved with Botanica San Diego, which is a nonprofit helping professionals and youth kind of achieve their academic or professional career goals. So yeah, I do some events throughout the community and try to help out as much as I can. Other than that, I think that's like the best place.
LinkedIn is the best way to reach Rosy Callejas. That's Callejas. Rosie, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your experience, which I had no idea half of the stuff that that you said was, entailed, in your position in SEO management. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. If you have a job you want to learn more about, let me know. contact me at hello@workuniversity.org. You can also get new episode announcements when you follow me on Instagram at work.university.